Can you point to a single moment in history where a successful revolution occurred by working within the existing ruling party apparatus? Virtually every single instance until there's an opportunity for there to be a vanguard party to be formed. Like literally every single one. Every single revolution has had tireless work and countless work leading up to the moment of revolution. Every single one. Every single one. It is obvious to me that many chatters have learned about communist history and socialist revolution from internet memes rather than actually reading. And I suspect it's my fault. It's my failure. Because when I say, I shouldn't be the only person you learn this stuff from, and you should actually actively seek it out on your own, say one, go ahead, not a single party said, we'll work with the liberal bourgeois party and get the money bourgeois elements out of it. What are you talking about? That's not what I'm talking about at all. Every single successful revolution has taken years and years of formative work working within the existing political constructs before that moment happens. Every single one. The difference between you and I is either you are being oblivious deliberately or are not acknowledging the history. There has never been formative, spontaneous organizing without exhausting the available tools within the working party infrastructure. I mean, this is the classic. Left-wing communism and infantile disorder. Should we participate in bourgeois parliaments? It is with the utmost contempt and the utmost levity that the German left communists reply to this question in the negative. Their arguments in the passage quoted above, we read, all reversion to parliamentary forms of struggle, which have become historically and politically obsolete, must be empathetically rejected. This is said with ridiculous pretentiousness and is patently wrong. Reversion to parliamentarism, forsooth. Perhaps there is already a Soviet Republic in Germany. It does not look like it. How, then, can one speak of reversion? It is not an empty phrase. Parliamentarianism has become historically obsolete. That is true in the propaganda sense. However, everybody knows that this is still a far cry from overcoming it in practice. Capitalism could have been declared, and with full justice, to be historically obsolete many decades ago. But that does not all remove the need for a very long and very persistent struggle on the basis of capitalism. Parliamentarism is historically obsolete from the standpoint of world history, i.e. the era of bourgeois parliamentarism is over and the era of proletarian dictatorship has begun. That is incontestable, but world history is counted in decades. 10 or 20 years earlier or later, 10 or 20 years earlier or later makes no difference when measured with the yardstick of world history. From the standpoint of world history, it is a trifle that cannot be considered even approximately. But for that very reason, it is a glaring theoretical error to apply the yardstick of world history to practical politics. Is parliamentarianism politically obsolete? That is quite a different matter. If that were true, the position of the lefts would be a strong one. But it is proved by a most searching analysis, and the lefts do not even know how to approach the matter. In the thesis on parliamentarism published in the Bulletin of the Provisional Bureau of the Amsterdam of the Communist International, number 1, February 1920, and obviously expressing the Dutch left or left Dutch strivings, the analysis, as we shall see, is hopelessly poor. In the first place, contrary to the opinion of such outstanding political leaders as Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht, the German lefts, as we know, considered parliamentarism politically obsolete even in January 1919. We know that the lefts were mistaken. This fact alone utterly destroys, at a single stroke, the proposition that parliamentarism is politically obsolete. It is for the lefts to prove why their error, indisputable at times, is no longer an error. They do not and cannot produce even a shred of proof. A political party's attitude towards its own mistakes is one of the most important and surest ways of judging how earnest the party is and how it fulfills in practice the obligations towards its class and the working people. Frankly, acknowledging a mistake, ascertaining the reasons for it, analyzing the conditions that have led up to it, and thrashing out the means of its rectification, that is the hallmark of a serious party. That is how it should perform its duties and how it should educate and train its class and then the masses. By failing to fulfill this duty and give the utmost attention and consideration to the study of their patent error, the lefts in Germany and in Holland have proved that they are not a party of a class, but a circle, not a party of the masses, but a group of intellectualists and of a few workers who ape the worst features of intellectualism. Second, in the same pamphlet of the Frankfurt Group of Lefts, which we have already cited in detail, we read, the millions of workers who still follow the policy of the center, the Catholic Center Party, are counter-revolutionary. The rural proletarians provide the legions of counter-revolutionary troops. Everything goes to show that this statement is far too sweeping and exaggerated. There was another guy, for the record, that also had an intellectual slant that decided that the peasant class would never play a formative role in any sort of revolution and would unironically be counter-revolutionary. He spent the rest of his days in Mexico. Okay? The notion that you cannot win over the masses is antithetical to a mass line developing. The notion that you would assume that you cannot win people over, enough people over to your side because of whatever background that they have or whatever worldview that they hold, okay, is antithetical to building any sort of serious movement. It's antithetical to building any sort of solidarity, okay? Like, I'm just specifically talking about the idea that you cannot exhaust all readily available options and that you think a revolution will organize spontaneously. It is the most idiotic, childlike, infantile, disordered way of thinking of all time. And it's not a new style of thinking at all. It is one that left comms have presented against a successful revolutionary such as Vladimir Lenin. You have to exhaust all options, especially while specifically analyzing the material conditions that currently exist in your day and age and looking at how much class consciousness already exists. The exhausted masses are dispossessed. They are oblivious to their class position in the heart of empire. Okay? This is where America was always a capitalist nation. It was a proto-capitalist nation before people were like, we're capitalists. Okay? With its endless territorial domination, its indigenous... There's a reason why America was so perfectly positioned to be the heart of capitalism around the globe. Okay? And they seized on that opportunity post-World War II. You look at a situation like this, a country like this, and you go, why is there so much anger and resentment towards the left position? And then you fantasize about a revolution spontaneously happening. You're fucking stupid. Okay? That's not what it takes. And it's never going to happen like that. The only thing that could spontaneously erupt is most likely a fascist counter-revolution, which is what we're in the fucking midst of anyway. Wake the fuck up.